Hello, everybody, and welcome to this event. We're just letting people in and we'll start in a second. Thanks for joining us and happy Refugee Week to everyone. This is Abir and I am the communication officer at IOM UK. I'm posting in the chat the link where you can see the biographies of our speaker. They will be introduced, of course, during the discussion, but if you want to have a look at their work, it's comprehensively included in this at this link. Thank you. Okay, I wouldn't delay the start, so over to you, Amlin, to kick off the meeting, because we have a lot to discuss and incredible experience to share, so we may start while we are letting other people in the meeting.
Great, thanks Abir. My name's Emlyn Pierce. I have been writing with Smaja Besso for the last 2.5 years. Smaja's a former refugee from Bosnia, and for the last 2.5 years we've been writing his story together. So Smaja is going to introduce himself first, and then we're going to come back to me and I'll tell you a bit more about myself before we continue. So Smaja, tell them about yourself.
Thanks, Emlyn. Hi everyone, welcome to this incredibly important event, and I think we're so honoured to hear from these experienced and amazing speakers today, and I'm just so excited to get into this. As Emlyn said, my name is Smaja. I came to the UK from Bosnia as a refugee when I was 9 years old in 1994, having survived ethnic cleansing and near starvation during the Bosnian genocide and the siege of Mostar. 6 years ago, I actually started telling my story as a way of seeking justice for me and my family, and because we have never had a chance to share and talk about our experience in a courthouse. I want to use my story really as a tool for peacemaking, to reduce the chances of other people having to go through what my family and what I experienced as a child. I always wanted to tell my story in the form of a book, and that was something that I had as a real desire ever since I was a child, but I wasn't sure I could write one on my own. And I also felt it was important that I worked with a writer that should be someone that I had chosen, who I had, or who I felt completely comfortable with. So we had similar aims and goals, and you know, I had many chances to write my story, but then coming across Emlyn, you know, that just felt right. So 2.5 years ago, I started working with Emlyn Pierce after my mom actually saw a video that he had made about unity that he had posted on his Facebook blog following the Manchester Arena bombings. So together we have written, or we're still in the process of writing about my experience, and the book is actually called Making Peace. It's like 99.9% done, which is, as I said, you know, something that we've spent a long time writing, and for me, it's been an incredibly difficult process, and it was so incredibly important that I did it with the right person. And we believe that peace is personal. In other words, that it starts with individuals having good mental health and feeling properly validated by their community. An individual's emotional state is the deepest foundation of a more equal and more peaceful world, and that's what me and Emlyn both believe in. If we wish to make peace between political ideologies, between races and between nations, we must first make peace with the personal traumas we have experienced. And for me, the trauma that I experienced 25, 26, 27 years ago is still very much real and ongoing, and it's in my present and will be in my future as well. So the best way of doing this, we believe, is for all people to be able to tell their stories and to have those stories properly heard. We are extremely grateful for the opportunity to chair this discussion today, and we're looking forward to hearing from the speakers about how we can all work on improving the means by which refugees share their stories in the world. Emlyn?
So just a few words of housekeeping, actually, before we continue. I should point out that this is being live streamed on Facebook, on IOM UK's Facebook page, and it will be available, obviously, to view there later on. If you've got questions and comments, you can post them on the chat as we go, and then as we come to the end of the discussion, we'll be dipping into those and putting some of those questions to the other speakers. So as Smaya said, we've been working together for about 2.5 years. I'm originally from South Africa. Funnily enough, Smaya and I arrived in the UK pretty much the same time. We think possibly even on the same day, the 18th of July, 1994. And so the work we've done together is quite influenced as well by South Africa's Truth and Reconciliation Commission, which I'm sure many of you will remember gave an opportunity for people, for Black South Africans, to tell their stories thoroughly, really for the first time. And we saw the kind of political change that could result from people being empowered in that way to tell their own stories. So we call this the Anne Frank effect. You know, the number 6 million tells us the scale of the Holocaust, but to understand why that number of 6 million matters, you have to understand the story of Anne Frank. So personal stories can have a dramatic effect in changing people's viewpoints in a way that data alone just cannot achieve. So I'm going to throw over to Dipti Pardeshi now. She's the International Organization for Migration's Chief of Mission, and she's going to tell us a bit more about today's event. Dipti.
Thank you, Emmeline. Good afternoon, everyone, and I welcome you all to this event today. On behalf of the International Organization for Migration, I'm delighted that we are having this discussion, telling stories of migration and displacement with humanity and hope as part of the Refugee Week 2021 festival. I'm Dipti Pardeshi, as just Emmeline mentioned, and I'm the Chief of Mission of IOM UK here, based in London. IOM advocates and works to help ensure the orderly and humane management of migration and provides humanitarian assistance to migrants in need around the world, including refugees and internally displaced people. In the UK, we help migrants and refugees to better integrate, and we assist receiving communities to recognize and support the positive contributions that they can make. We work with our partners in various areas, such as to counter human trafficking, to protect unaccompanied migrant children, and others such as diaspora engagement or migration research. Along with our partners, it has also been a privilege to support refugee resettlement under the various UK schemes, such as the Vulnerable Persons Relocation Scheme, which many of you may be aware, 20,000 were resettled under this program. Migration is one of the key realities of our time. It cuts across communities, influences priorities, and shapes societies. To realize the benefits for migrants and host communities alike, our responses must be innovative, collaborative, and designed beyond the immediate. And in this context, for today's event, I'm thrilled to welcome our moderators and panelists for what is guaranteed to be a fruitful and stimulating discussion with them. We have with us photographer Robin Hammond, photojournalist Banar Sardar, our IOM Global Social Media Officer, Luca Lamorte, and our moderators who you have just heard, architect and educator Smahio Beso, and author Emmeline Pierce. As you may already know, the theme of this year's Refugee Week is "We Cannot Walk Alone." Along these lines, therefore, let me thank our partners for this event today. Witness Change, who through visual storytelling help amplify the voices of marginalized groups. You will shortly hear more about their work, and more specifically, of course, about their latest project, 1000 Dreams, directly from its founder, Robin Hammond. And we also have with us IMIX, whose core mission is to elevate the conversation about migration through telling powerful stories, putting a human face to headlines, to create a more welcoming and cohesive society. They are also the media partners for Refugee Week and have been working closely with a group of Refugee Week ambassadors to tell their stories to support this festival. We therefore, in that context, have Banar Sardar, who is with us on the panel today. By shedding light on some very good practices of storytelling around displacement and migration, we hope this discussion will inspire you to share more stories of people from refugee backgrounds, and to do so with kindness, compassion, and empathy. The project 1000 Dreams that has trained and equipped many refugees across Europe to tell the stories of refugees and displaced people opens up for fascinating suggestions around what constitutes effective and ethical storytelling. Empowering people from refugee backgrounds to tell their own stories is certainly one way to ensure that their voices are included and amplified. But because we know that there are times in all our lives when we need someone to walk with us, and times when life calls us to walk besides others, we all have a part to play to ensure that refugee stories are told in a fair and balanced way. We therefore hope that today's discussion will provide you with new ideas to contribute to a fairer representation of migration and displacement. So without further ado, on behalf of IOM UK and our partners, I thank you again for joining us today, and happy Refugee Week. And I'm very pleased to hand over back to our moderators. Over to you, Evelyn.
Thank you, Dipti. That's a great summary of the importance of what we're all doing here today. We're now going to go around each speaker in turn and get them to introduce themselves, starting with the only speaker we have today who is both a storyteller and a refugee. So if there's an expert we should all be looking to today, it's Benar Sadar. So Benar, please tell us a bit more about your work and why you do it.
Yeah, hi everyone, and I'm really grateful to be here with you with the Refugee Week. My name is Benar. I'm from Kurdistan region. It's about 3 years I'm here in the UK. I started the photography in 2010, and I involved in the 1000 Dreams. It's really, I want to talk about one things here. It's like I displaced it twice, and the first one was in Iran, and the second times I'm here in the UK. It's like when I was a kid, and I used to read stories and a lot on how to embody some characters in my mind, and it's really impressive, and I never thought I would be a storyteller one day. Yeah, this is, can I say this is my introduce, and that's it. Yeah.
Great, thank you very much, Benar. So we're now going to hear from Luca Lamorte, who is IOM's head of social media. So he's kind of doing the technical stuff in terms of getting those stories out in front of people. Luca, if you could tell us a bit more about what you do, please. Oh, Luca's on mute.
Oh.
You're on mute, but we can hear you now.
Sorry. Can you hear me now?
We can hear you. Yes.
Sorry. I was saying it's very difficult for me to describe in 30 seconds with an elevator pitch what I do, but I basically try to make sense of IOM's digital presence across 9 different regions. So with my small team, we collect stories from all over the world, and we try to humanize the lived experiences of migrants, refugees, and internally displaced people every day, trying to highlight their stories and trying to focus on the positive aspects of migration. And at the same time, we spend a lot of our days trying to find creative ways to counter xenophobia, discrimination, racism, and stigma against migrants and other minorities. So that would be in a nutshell what I do.
Great, thank you very much, Luca. And finally, Robin Hammond, who is a photographer involved in the 1000 Dreams project. Robin, tell us a bit more about that.
Thanks. So yeah, I'm Robin Hammond. I'm a photojournalist. I'm a founder of Witness Change, which is an organization dedicated to amplifying the voices of marginalized groups. And I'm the creator of 1000 Dreams, which we're going to talk a little bit more about today. This project, which is supporting refugees around Europe to tell the stories of the refugee communities. What else can I tell you? So as a photojournalist, I'm a contributor to National Geographic, Time Magazine, New York Times. But I also, in this instance with 1000 Dreams, I'm a teacher and a mentor, and try my best to support try my best to get out of the way as a storyteller, actually, and letting refugees tell their stories for themselves. But maybe I'm sure we'll talk a bit more about that as we go. Oh, and I should just say that I'm from New Zealand, where I am right now, and it's 2 o'clock in the morning. So excuse me if I look a little bit bleary-eyed and start yawning. I will stay focused and drink some more coffee.
We never would have guessed if you hadn't said. You seem bright-eyed and bushy-tailed to me. So we're going to watch a video now, actually, about the Thousand Dreams project to give everyone a bit more of an idea of what that work entails.
Refugees are strong, or they pass like a difficult time, but they're still normal people with dreams, with hopes.
In the photo, we can show exactly their feeling, their dream, their challenge.
The storytelling changed a lot of things around the world, because as a human, if you see another human going through all this difficulty and these challenges, you will feel it and you will put yourself in the same situation. Then you will act and you will help.
Refugee stories have always been told by other people, by outsiders. It's not a great situation when refugees never get to tell their stories themselves. So we created 1000 Dreams to really give refugees the opportunity to tell their own stories.
A lot of people came here, a lot of people tried to tell stories, but they didn't do it with dignity. They just came with one idea. As a refugee, I'm trying to talk about the reality, what I saw, what I went through. At the same time, what I dream of. All of us has dreams, all of us have normal life. We want to continue our normal lives.
It's really important for us that we didn't have a singular story about what is refugee. We really wanted to embrace the diversity and complexity of the refugee experience, and that's why we created 1000 Dreams. We wanted to tell these 1000 stories that depicted the great variety of lives and experiences that refugees have lived.
We shouldn't lose our hope. We should continue our wish, finding ourselves, what was our dream.
As refugees, we face that same, like the others faced, trying to tell our stories by ourselves with dignity.
And it's stories that impact attitudes, which go on to impact policies. And if we get the stories wrong, the attitudes and policies will be wrong. It's only through sharing these stories that we can change the narrative.
Okay, thank you for that. I think it's an incredible project, and someone that comes from a refugee background and having that element of control. I think there's just nothing, for me personally, there's nothing more important, because becoming a refugee for me, it was all about loss of life, loss of community, loss of family, and just your whole life being turned completely upside down. And as I said, having control of my own narrative is one of the kind of the best ways that I process the things that I experience in life, and that helps me really deal with these very, very difficult memories and situations. So I think this is absolutely incredible project and the work that you're doing, Robin. So maybe if we could start with you, and if you could, I know the video answers a lot of that, but if you could just tell us a bit more, why did you decide to train refugees as storytellers instead of telling the stories yourself? Because you're an award-winning photojournalist, you've obviously got these incredible talents and this gift. Can you just tell us a bit more about that, please?
Sure. Well, I mean, so the organization I created, Witness Change, this has been said already, you know, it's dedicated to amplifying the voice of marginalized groups. And the beginning of that, at the start, I interpreted that as being, I would go into marginalized communities and tell their stories. And I did that initially in earlier part of my career, especially around you know, people living with mental health issues. I started in 2014 a project about LGBTQI plus folks living in countries where who they are or how they identify is illegal. And my approach changed slightly there, where I made collaborative portraits and asked people to write their own stories. And I thought, okay, here I am. This is maybe, you know, a good way to amplify voices. And I guess that, you know, then 1000 Dreams is a further evolution of that work, where I'm trying to, I just, you know, get out of the way in a sense, and do my best to elevate the capacity of people with a refugee background to tell their own stories. And I think that, you know, it comes back to something that you said, Smayo, that you know, for a lot of refugees, I think their experience is one of loss, and something that they've lost is the ability to define their narrative. And I think that, you know, stories are how we relate to ourselves and to each other. And while I don't believe that, you know, I really believe in journalism, and I think that journalism plays a vital role in free societies, but I don't think we can have a situation where a group of people virtually never get to contribute to defining who they are. And I think that there's grave dangers when it's outsiders always telling those stories. And I think in the case of refugees, often those stories can end up being either really toxic or can be somehow paternalistic and treat refugees as hopeless victims. When, of course, you know, and I think that most people in this call know this, but I think there's a lot of people out there who don't, that, you know, refugees are just normal people going through extraordinary situations, and their experiences are as diverse as our experiences, those of us who are not from a refugee background. And I think that's why we wanted to do this project, is embrace that diversity and support refugees to be able to tell their stories, you know, for themselves.
I think it's a really interesting what you say there, Robin, about people defining themselves, because storytelling, in a sense, does create who we are. It helps our understanding of where we sit in the world and how we relate to other people. So Benar, you are a refugee, as you say, displaced twice, and also a storyteller, a photographer. So I wonder if you could tell us a bit about how your experience of telling your story has actually affected your own relationship with your story, how it's influenced the way that you have been able to make sense of the experiences that you've been through.
Yeah, really, I want to talk about my experience and my background about became a refugee. So like shortly, I will say it's when I was in Iran, I was 7 years old, and we walked with my mom and my siblings, and it's like by walking by feet. In that time we had not car, and we went. It's like we crossed the cities and we went to the Iran. And my mom forcing me to walk, because it's because we fled, or it's like we escaped it because of the Baath's regime. And we take 203 kilometers. It's for 7 years old, how can it be? It's to walk that kind, or it's that much of kilometers. And it's my mom every time give us, it's like a piece of a bread, and we drink muddy water and eat a piece of bread and stay under tent in a rainy night. And those things is like let me to feeling for those refugees here. It's like we face it, this circumstance, we automatically know how to feel the pain of somebody's. And I want to mention two small examples here. Is like the one when I was working in a Kurdistan region camps. I would to make a story about one lady. She's living in a camp, and when really I asked her to, I came to and I want to make a story about you, and directly she said, "It's like no, I will not let you to take photos because you are not." Know about our pain, or you are not feeling. After I talked about my experience, how I faced it when I was a refugee, and after that she let me, and I made one stories, and after that we became a friend. And every time when I went to the camp, and we have a breakfast together, and this is the first my experience. And the second one was the project of the Southern Dreams. One of the participants talks about the disappearance of his brother between Turkey and Greece. And for it's about 3 years, he not know anything about his brother. And how should be your feeling or your pain? It's like I told her, it's like I know how you feeling or how you pain, because when you went to Iran and we missed my brother, and it's like for after a couple of months we found him. And yeah, those things is like let you to do these stories and to make people, it's like to allow you to take photos.
Thank you for that, Bernard, and thank you for sharing your incredible experience and your story. I think it's really great to have you here today. If I can ask you a follow-up question, please, if you don't mind. I think you said you started photography in 2010, if I'm not mistaken. Can you just tell us a bit more about why you exactly started that, and just a bit more about your what does it feel like to have that close proximity to such a sensitive subject? Because sometimes I struggle myself distancing myself from the kind of the subject of study, whether it's genocide study or whether it's refugees and so on. Can you just tell us a bit more about that, how you kind of navigate those things?
Yeah, it's as I said previously, so like when you face it, the same things, it's like let you to be close to those subjects or to those people when you want to take photos of them. It's like each of those photos right now. Yeah, this is when I started to make a story, and when they talk about stories about themselves, and really directly it's like a flashback came to my mind and what's happened to me before. And this is it's like the is we can say it's like the histories will repeat it. It's like another time came, and this has led me so like to start or to continue my career here as a photojournalist, because while I'm here, it's about the 3 years, I'm not did anything about the refugees here. And while they told me it's like about 1,000 dreams, and really I was grateful, or it's like I was really happy to involve in this project because I am the one among them.
Thank you for that, Bernard. I was intrigued by the things you were talking about, as I said, because that's something that I am personally constantly battling with, this echemic experience and kind of research and involvement with these projects. So thank you for that, for your insight. If we could just ask Luca a question. I see he's unmuted himself. Can you just tell us a bit more about how IOM uses digital platforms for storytelling, and if there's ways that, and I know this is such a big question again, and is there ways of kind of improving understanding for organizations and individuals wanting to do this?
Well, we certainly have to learn a lot. So one of the core of elements of the strategy that I put in place was to focus on storytelling, on the experiences of the people we're trying to serve, and try to remove IOM as much as possible from the picture. It was in the past decade, I would say, most UN agencies were having this very self-reflecting narrative in which the emphasis would be placed more on the role they played in a humanitarian crisis, and less on the stories of the people who were affected by specific crises. In the world of migration, in the world of displaced people, and in the world of refugees, then I think the lenses have switched. But then we have created other problems, I would say, in the past few years. We have probably contributed to certainly raising the bar of storytelling, but at the same time, we have created new problems in the sense that some of the stories that we know will receive more attentions are not stories that empower the people we're trying to serve, but rather put them in a position of vulnerability. So look at this poor child in DRC, he's been displaced. Look at this woman, she survived detention centers in Libya and made it to Europe regardless. And so what we have done is, I think, while we were successful in removing the agencies, the UN, the NGOs from the pictures, we were not successful in the same time, to the same extent in telling their stories with full dignity at all times, which I think brings me to the next point, which is what I think we should be doing now, and what I think many are doing now. The sense of, well, the way social media has evolved today from 2007 back to 2016, we have gone from a very top-down of narratives in which we control everything to what's exploding since 2020, narratives in which refugees and migrants and IDPs also have their own platforms and want to tell their stories. And they themselves turn into micro-influencers or influencers themselves. So I think this is an opportunity for the UN, because it helps us certainly to drive the narrative to a certain degree, which is something, of course, every company, every agency will have to do, but at the same time to create more space for refugees to either tell their own story with their own words, or to use their own platforms and being amplified with a takeover, or maybe with partnerships, existing partnerships with UN agencies, so that we don't make the mistakes we did until a few years ago and longer. We leave some space to the people we're trying to serve to actually tell us their stories, and maybe introduce us to some cultural elements or cultural aspects that some of us will ignore. Me, for instance, as a Southern European man, there might be instances in which I don't really understand how best to frame a story of a refugee woman from Somalia. Maybe there are some things that she wants to say that I will not understand, but that's because I'm not from her culture. And if we're trying to target, for instance, members of the diaspora so that we can present these stories in a positive ways, or if we're trying to target people who might express sentiments of discrimination and xenophobia, then why not letting her handle her own story rather than putting so many filters? So I think moving forward, we have an interesting challenge as humanitarians and communication specialists. And certainly the solution will require for migrants and refugees to be more and more involved in these storytelling experiences, and for us to create that space for them and to allow them to use our platforms more and more so that they can tell us their stories and tell us their stories highlighting resiliences and maybe successes that we wouldn't normally notice, because we also tend to see things through our own humanitarian lenses, which might not always be the best ways to tell a specific story of a specific person who comes from a completely different environment. So yeah, lots of challenges ahead for all of us.
Thanks, Luke. I think you've painted a really great outline there of the complexities of social media, because of course social media is a wonderful democratizing force. It means that refugees can get their stories out there themselves, but it also rewards sensationalism, and it rewards those shocking images or those most traumatic stories. And people aren't going to be as interested perhaps in the story of a refugee who's done well, or who's had a whose life has improved. That kind of thing isn't rewarded by algorithms so much. One thing that Smaio and I have really experienced in working together is that there can be an enormous cost in a refugee telling their story, because of course their story is often very traumatic, and there's a lot of pain there to be unpacked. There have been times when Smaio has had to step back from the work that we do and kind of and take a bit of a breather. So Robin, I was wondering, when you're working with refugees, how would you take into account that element of trauma and ensure that you're not re-traumatizing refugees in the telling of their story? How do you balance those sort of competing forces of the need to tell and the need to not be re-traumatized?
Well, I think with this work, of course, I'm not doing any of the storytelling, right? So we're elevating the capacity of refugees to tell the stories of their own community. So it's Benar and the other 39 storytellers who we've been supporting to do that. I think one of the things that's really important that we really stress quite heavily is that we really need to try to create a space, and it's really hard to do, but create a space where both the person being interviewed, but also the person doing the interviewing, can be okay with not answering a question, or because whenever you come into these situations, there's sort of these unspoken power dynamics, which I think need to be addressed when early on, otherwise that you can be causing problems. So I think we really want the refugee storytellers who we've been working with to be able to create an environment where people can say, actually, just bypass that and make that totally okay for people not to talk about certain situations. And what we've also done is we created a list of questions which act as a guide for folks, but we really want the refugee storytellers to take ownership of the process. And what we're encouraging them to do is tell these stories that illustrate people's the challenges and the strengths and the dreams. Those are kind of the three main themes that we're trying to bring out in these interviews. But how they get to that is entirely up to them. And I think the most important thing is that both parties feel comfortable in the process. I mean, one of the things that kind of helps with this project is that most of the people, most of the refugee storytellers, when I say storytellers, I mean like the refugee photojournalists, most of the people they're interviewing, they know or have some relationship with. So most often it's not a surprise, that what they're going to say, or there is a personal connection already. So I think there's already an understanding of where they should go and shouldn't go. And I guess also the other thing which is kind of interesting with this project is most of the refugee storytellers are telling the stories of their own specific communities. So mostly Afghans telling stories of Afghans, or Kurdish folks telling stories of Kurdish folks. And so obviously there's this level of deep cultural understanding as well, which I think really helps with the way that they approach their storytelling.
Thank you. Just a very quick reminder that if you've got questions, please put them in the chat now, because we're going to be throwing the discussion open to the floor in just a minute. I'd like to just ask Benar, about your your sort of experience. So you're working mainly with other Kurdish people. Is that right? When you're working on the project, how does your understanding of that culture help you to facilitate them in their storytelling?
Yeah, when I started my with this project, it's like in the beginning, it's like just I interviewed with the Kurdish community, but it's like after that, because I have a really great connection here in my cities here right now. Yeah, I found some Sudanese, I found some Bangladesh and from another countries. It's but it's like we have the same things, or it's like we have the same feelings. Like some of my friends, they are from my country, and when they told me stories about themselves, and it's for me it was sometimes it's normal because I heard about it before, and this is maybe for another one it's like they not face it those kind issues. Is for them it's like surprising sometimes. Yeah, it's like when you doing a story, so like when you make a good relation between you and those peoples, they will trust you and they will let you to make a stories about them. It's like there's a one thing is a really like a really important to do. It's like after when you make a stories after that, it's like you not cut that relations between you and them. It's like will make you to have a really trust and they believe you. It's like to not let them alone. And maybe sometimes when they have some challenges, or when they talked about some dreams, or it's like strengths, and it's like you are like a bridge for them. It's like you will it's like they have some message and you will it's like a postman, or it's like some deliver, you will deliver the message of them.
That's great. I love that image of the bridge. I think it's something. Smaya, having Smaya was in Mostar. He apologizes, by the way, that he's having internet trouble, so Smaya might disappear, but he's all right. It's just internet problems. But yeah, that idea of a bridge, I think, is so important, because one of the challenges of storytelling is that you, as the storyteller, you lose control to an extent because you don't know how your story will be received. And
Yeah.
as the listener, you are also not in control because you're receiving a story from somewhere else. So actually, the story is created in the space between.
Yeah, because there's just one thing. It's really I want to mention this. It's like when I worked in Kurdistan, I did one stories about that religion under one roof. It's like there's two families. It's like in a different religions. They are together, living together, and they played because of ISIS, Daesh. And it's like while I'm taking photos there, or it's like I published my photos, it's after that there are so many organizations and they contacted me and they wanted to help that families. They wanted to, because they have the both of family, they have a same issue. It's like the two families, they have a handicap kids, and because of this, it's like some organization they came, and one organization they helped the Christian families, and right now the Christian families in a Lebanon. And really I want to continue my story to go to the Lebanon and to start with them while they came to the France, because some organization in France, they promised them, it's like they will bring them to France. And really, and I hope to continue these stories to be with them.
Fantastic. Well, we look forward to seeing how that turns out. I think it's interesting how sometimes the deeper you get, actually you find the more you have in common with people who might see.
Yeah.
You start to recognize parts of your own story in the stories of other people. So we're going to throw things open to the floor now, which will consist of us reading messages, seeing as we can't all be in the same room. We've got a reflection here rather than a question from Poppy, just saying that refugee pessimistic narratives are driven by country politics and NGOs to raise funds, etc. I think mass media plays a tremendously significant role in the imagining of communities, issues, and importantly, what action they can take. I'm yet to see a great relationship between mass media and lived experience on this agenda. It's worth looking at the last 20 years of work in mental health in the UK. We have some great examples of the two working together. So it's an interesting idea that the mass media, which of course is how most people will contend with these stories of refugees, is still possibly sort of lagging bit behind. We've got, there's a question up here I just want to oh, somebody asked if there's a book about the 1,000 Dreams project. Any plans for a book? Or
we are really happy to take on anyone who wants to fund the publication of a book. We don't have that sort of resource at the moment. We have our website will be launching on Friday morning. We have social media accounts already starting, and so the dissemination of the work is mostly with traditional media. We have a few publications running on Friday, and our social media is starting up now. So if anyone wants to go onto Instagram and see @1000 Dreams, we also have a Facebook group, which I'll put in the chat too, which we would love people to join if they want to see more.
Right, so watch that space for the book. So I've got a question here. I think Luca would be good to answer. It's I'm sorry if I mispronounce your name. It's a question from Basante Shahata. And the question is, I want to ask about the current situation with the pandemic going on and misinformation. How can we tackle misinformation and empower refugees with the information needed? As much as social media is empowering, it could also be a reason for circulating misinformation. So obviously, that great democratizing effect of social media also means anybody can put anything out there, and how can we make sure that the information people are getting is actually accurate?
That's a $1 million question. I would say the main issue is not just the democratization of information. We've seen that everyone now has an opinion about everything, which also has a counter effect, meaning that what we considered authoritative positions before on specific subjects have lost their on issues have lost their values. On top of that, social media is incredibly divisive, in the sense that conversations can escalate very quickly from 0 to 100, because we're not in the same room. So we are not really using conventional social norms. We're interacting with people who disagree with our opinion. So you might have actually misinformation from both sides of the political spectrum. It's not true that it's only the alt-right who does misinformation. We all tend to apply in-group solidarity and biases to certain ideas that we comply to. So we're all victims of the same effects. The other issue is that we don't really have constructive conversations, because if the debate escalates quickly, for example on Twitter, we are not going to agree to disagree, but we're just going to offend each other. So misinformation is really a different subject to tackle. And the way we deal for it at IOM is by we created a cluster that groups specific comments under certain categories. And then the people who have the strongest opinion on specific subjects, they get into a specific cluster that my team and I have one-on-one conversation with. So instead of having conversations in front of everyone where they can offend us or double down on the same point without really answering to our questions, we have a one-on-one conversation where we try to listen to why they have specific views, strong views about migrants and refugees. We try to understand where these views generate, whether people before us, maybe from the UN sector, have dismissed their concerns in either an arrogant way or in a derogatory one, and that might have, angered them even more. And then we try to find a compromise in which we at least agree to disagree peacefully. We share information with each other, and we keep in touch. And over the years, I was able to have interesting conversations with people who even belonged to certain groups, such as the KKK in North America, and have cordial relationships that over time resulted in their ideas, in some ideas, to change or to adapt or to even be more open to migrants and refugees, but it took time. So social media cannot take the place of a good conversation with a friend in front of a beer at a local pub. I think personal interaction will always be more useful when you want to have productive conversations. Social media will always have so many elements that can go wrong, and unless you have a large team and a lot of time at hand to address one by one these people, chances are you would not really be able to change their minds, because we all react to the same in-group and solidarity biases that we have towards people from our circle or people who think like us. So it's a very complicated answer, and this is a very simplistic reply from my side, but I hope it's helpful.
I thought that was very thorough, actually, considering I mean, you're right. What you're getting at is the complexity of human relationships. And if you want to change people's minds, you have to understand where they're coming from first of all. And it's ironic that so many of the conflicts that refugees are fleeing from are because of a breakdown in exactly that, in that kind of communication. So we've got a question from Ali Jihad for Benar and Robin specifically. We'll go to Benar first of all. Being a refugee and someone who's worked with refugees in the past, what is something, Benar, that you have discovered or learned by working on this project? Or let's say, what was the best thing that you've discovered or learned by working on this project?
What I discovered or learned is because most of my stories is about the Kurdish refugees. Already I know about the culture, about many things about them. It's not much new for me. But I discovered some Sudanese culture or Bangladesh or Somali's culture. This is for me. I contact, or I made a new relation with some people. It's just out of Kurdish communities. This is and some of them still is after when I finish my stories, it's I met them, and sometimes I will drink tea together. This is I learned.
Fantastic. And what I wanted to ask Robin actually about, we've got this kind of, I mean, there's always a danger with discussing refugees, isn't there? That on the one hand, you've got the danger of refugees are all a threat. They're coming over here. They're potentially violent. That kind of negative portrayal. But then at the other end of the spectrum, you've got this idea of your kind of Mo Farah effect of well, refugees can be so inspirational, and some of them will win gold medals for their country, and which is dehumanizing in another way, because of course some people deserve safety because they're human beings, not because they're Olympic gold medalists. Thankfully for those of us who can't run at all. So Robin, I want to ask you, how do we deal with that kind of end of the spectrum, and with the fact that that sometimes, as one of our questions put it, that it becomes a kind of inspiration porn with refugees? How do we avoid falling into that territory?
Well, and I nearly did fall into that territory when we were conceiving of this project. This project is fundamentally supposed to be a narrative change project, right? And mostly what we're trying to do is address toxic narratives. But fortunately, we brought on some really great advisors who are some who are experts in refugee issues, and some with lived experience, who help to guide us away from the sort of deserving refugee narrative, which thankfully, and I think it's one of the things that which is Emin, I'm not really quite sure if I can remember your question, but what I was going to say is that one of the things that has been amazing about this project is how inspiring some of the ordinary stories have been. Inspiring because I feel that I can relate to them. They're I had a kid last year, and fathers talking about separation from their children, and you can relate to that immediately on a human level, regardless of whether people speak the same language or, you know, you can understand what that must be like. So I think in some ways, the ordinary stories have even maybe a greater ability to connect with us ordinary people, because we can imagine that being a situation that, you know, if that had happened to us, how we would feel. I'm not sure if that answers your question, because I can't remember what your question was.
No, well, I mean, it was about inspiration porn and kind of almost idealizing the refugee. But I think that's a really good answer, because I mean, it's something Smayo and I kind of experienced very early in the work that we did together. Smayo told me the story of his childhood dog, Lessie, in Bosnia, and he built a little dog house for Lessie, which looked like Snoopy's house in Peanuts. It was a little red house, and he imagined that when he got Lessie would sleep on top of it like Snoopy does. And of course he didn't. And he tells that story, and everyone who hears it thinks of the dog that they had as a child. And you're absolutely right that, you know, most of us will never understand what it feels like to have to get into a boat and cross the English Channel in the middle of the night. That's not as horrifying as it is. It's not something people can relate to. But it's those things like a childhood dog, or I remember my brother phoning me up when he's Aylan Kurdi, when he died on that beach in Greece, and seeing his little shoes, and then seeing his son's shoes, and just those little shoes made it real to him. So yeah, I think for those of us who are involved in helping refugees to tell their stories, it's remembering that refugees are people seeking refuge. They're not just refugees. They're as full and rich and complex as we all are. I feel like, let me see if we can squeeze in one more question, because we got three minutes. And Smaya's disappeared, so I'm flying solo. Let me have a look. I mean, Robin, do you want to tell us about something that you've learned from doing it? But no, we put that question to Benar, and then be interesting to hear what the best thing is, or what epiphanies you've had, if any, through the work that you've done.
I mean, I guess, you know, I always hope that the work would be good, but I guess, you know, I didn't expect it to be just so extraordinary. Seeing the work that these refugee photojournalists have produced has just been phenomenal. You know, I have to when I first present this work to anyone, I have to explain to them, these are not my photographs. These are not, you know, some of the people who did this work had never picked up a camera in their lives before starting it. So it's amazingly gratifying to see what amazing storytellers they have become, you know, and, you know, because they've got the lived experience of being a refugee. But I think that, you know, but I wanted also just to maybe talk about one of the issues that Benar spoke about, and, you know, this side, and you covered it to him, and about, you know, this whole sort of this idea of familiarity, and how that one familiarity can help people to get access. They know people, and, you know, maybe, like as Benar said, she can tell stories that I would never be able to get. But I think there's also sometimes one of the challenges of that is that familiarity can be a challenge, in that, you know, these are experiences that people have lived with all their lives. Maybe they've spoken about it a lot, and sometimes it's a challenge for some refugee storytellers, or people who are telling stories from their own community, to not just bypass information, which, you know, this is like an assumed knowledge of. Everybody knows about refugees. So I know that some of the refugee storytellers that we've been working with have expressed this, of how they have to not only be you know, this person with lived experience speaking to someone else's lived experience, but also try and step out of that as well, try to understand what does somebody who has not experienced this before, how would they relate to this. And then, of course, the other issue with familiarity is you know, is there a potential danger of triggering something someone's still trying to process. My light's gone off. So yeah, great things, but challenges as well in doing this work.
Great. Well, thank you very much. I think that brings us neatly to 4 o'clock. Thank you so much, everybody, particularly to our speakers for sharing your experiences and your thoughts. Thank you to IOM, of course, for hosting this and organizing it all. And particularly, I don't know where Smayo's gone. I hope he's okay. But on behalf of me and Smayo, we're really so grateful to have this opportunity to get involved. And we hope that, that we can all stay in touch with each other after this and keep contributing to this conversation, because if anything, it becomes more and more relevant and more important over time. So thank you very much, and thank you all for your contributions.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you for this opportunity. Thank you.